The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Hertha Lund, and she's here to talk to us about how she has merged trauma and horses to heal herself. Let's welcome Hertha Lund.
Hi, Andrea. I'm so happy to be here to talk to you. This is exciting.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here because you have quite the story. It's not just that you had some trauma and you healed with horses, but before we get into your near-death experience, let's talk about your childhood a little bit and all the trauma that you had as a child.
Yeah, so my childhood is fairly unique in today's world because I grew up on the breaks in rural Montana. And the breaks is country that's really rough. Most of the time you think of mountains and being rugged, but this is country that has mountains, but it also has ravines carved into the earth by water. So it's very rough. You can see somewhere you could go, but you might have to go for a couple hours to get around the big coulee or the big cut in the earth. So
Okay.
it's huge country. And
Uh-huh.
that's where I was born. And we lived like 40 minutes from any services and was beautiful in some ways. And I loved being there. But my mom had her own trauma. She was abused when she was a child and she
Okay.
didn't deal with it. There were no services. So she used alcohol. And when she drank, she could be a terror. And I was the oldest daughter. So I got the brunt of her unprocessed pain. And then I was also sexually abused by the neighbor boy when I was 5. So
Oh
there
my
was
God.
twin towers of trauma. And both of those caused me to talk to God when I was outside with my horses, always very spiritual. So I was inside taught, not from the outside.
Yeah.
And I would be out there and I would want to go home. So I had a strong, strong pull to leave Earth and go home because I thought it was a pretty rotten place.
Okay. So when you were sexually abused by the neighbor boy, is this something you shared with your mom? And because of her being an alcoholic, she blew off, or what happened with all that?
I didn't tell her because my mom was such a fierce woman. I was afraid she would kill him.
Oh,
And
wow.
and then we would have more problems for the family. So I never told her.
Did you tell anyone?
Not until I was in my 20s.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, even telling you that now, I just got the somatic hit of that trauma, how, was stored in my body.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm sorry. How did that affect you as a child, though? So you're saying you were the oldest of siblings and knowing that you have this neighbor. Did you have sisters, brothers?
Actually, I'm the oldest girl. I do have an
Okay.
older brother. I have a twin brother and a younger
Okay.
sister.
Okay. So did you feel, knowing that you have this neighbor that does that, were you overly protective of her, like going outside? Was there any fear of you can't go out there, you can't talk to him, or any of that?
She was small enough at that time. She was still just a toddler. So there
Okay.
was no chance.
But
Um,
okay, what about as you grew up though? Or did he
we
move away?
moved. We
You
moved
moved.
from there.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, within 2 years of the sexual abuse, I did move away from him, so it basically all got stuck inside me. I had started having nightmares. I'd get
Okay.
chased at night by guys who were trying to kill me.
Okay. How old was he?
Teenager.
Okay, he was a teenager and you were 5. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot to go through. So did you deal with it when you were in your 20s, or did you just share it, but still
No. I mean, when you have deep trauma, I had complex PTSD also from my mom
okay.
because she had an anger issue. And like one time I couldn't find my shoes and she almost choked me to death.
Oh my gosh.
So
But
for
fear
having complex PTSD, so I kind of closed my heart off and became an
Mhm,
overachiever. So it all got turned inward.
mhm.
But early on, I won this, I won that, all through high school and college. I was a state champion in multiple sports at the same time. I played college basketball and rodeoed. I was a pre-vet, pre-med student. So I channeled all my trauma into trying to be the best I could be, never letting anybody close,
Mhm.
and just succeeding and being busy. I never wanted to slow down to feel.
Okay. Yeah, you don't wanna feel. But also, did you push yourself to succeed because you felt like as long as I'm this perfect being, my mom's not gonna be angry about anything?
No, it was my
Okay.
way of getting away from her.
It was just your way. Okay, just being
Yeah,
busy
yeah.
and yeah.
I just
Okay.
had to get away from her. That was my
Okay.
strategy, was to leave, get as
Okay.
far away from her as I could. And note, I still loved her.
Of course.
Yeah, so it's twisted in my being.
You know, it's hard, right? It's twisted, but at the same time, I feel like we can love everyone where they're at.
Mhm.
And, like you said, this was something that was passed down to her as well. And so it's hard sometimes when you're young to understand why somebody does the things that they do, but it had nothing to do with you, right? Like she wasn't actually mad about you tying your shoelace or any like her,
Right,
it was just like in that moment, maybe you were taking too long and she was going to be late. And the real issue was she was going to be late and she felt like she was going to look bad. And it spirals so fast in people like that. But it had nothing to do with you. It's just all these other thoughts that they're having in their head. And I feel like we can come to a place of it's hard, it's not easy, but you can come to a place of just forgiving somebody and loving them. And you don't have to appreciate what they did to you by any means, but you can understand why they
right.
did what they did.
And I actually believe that I do think there's a greater plan and that I needed my mom. And I also needed her not to be such a great mom. I think that was part of my lessons as a soul.
Mhm.
However, I think she went for the Emmy. She could have just been bad. And I also believe that by healing myself now, that actually heals up and down the family tree. So I
Mhm.
believe it's the greatest love I can give to her is to heal myself.
Yeah.
And then that allows me to have the healing and embody that in a way that she wasn't able to or didn't have the resources for in her life. So
But let's say that, had she not gone for that Emmy and gone all out with it, you maybe would have not been pushed as hard to do so much healing. Because I'd be like, my mom was just kind of a crappy
mhm.
mom, not full on like Emmy winning bad, but not great. Like, that's probably not as enticing to you to go do all this work. And I mean, it's a lot of work when you're healing trauma. So,
That's
I,
all true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back then to your 20s after you admit to this sexual assault. It's coming out. Things are kind of bubbling and surfacing, I'm imagining, at that point. Like, when does it come about that you decide you're going to start healing yourself?
Well, it would kind of erupt and then I'd push it back down. So
Mhm,
in my early 20s, I'm going to college to be a veterinarian or a doctor, and I'm out riding, and I actually had a cyst rupture.
mhm.
And I was tough. I didn't go in, and I had a pretty bad reaction because of the infection that was spread. You're supposed to jump on that right away. So I was aware that I could die at that time, and I was talking to God, and I'm like, I don't really like it here. And I've loved everyone. And it's basically the answer came back. And it's like, you don't have to love everyone. You have to love more in time, in time and space. I mean, there's something greater than just loving everyone. It was
Mhm.
like that was new to me. It's like, huh. And I didn't leave at that time. I got very sick with the infection, but it kind of got me on the straight and narrow, and I started a spiritual path. I searched and I studied the major traditions of the mystical traditions of most of the world's religions.
Mhm.
And that kind of kept me going for a while. And I was pretty sincere about my spiritual path. My mom was an alcoholic. I had a propensity to want to go back there to follow in her footsteps. And so having the spiritual path kept me centered and focused and moving forward. And I was able to do that. I took some time off and managed a ranch. We lost our ranch at that time, our family ranch. So I had to work several different jobs. I worked as a waitress during the day. Sometimes at night, I worked as a janitor, sometimes a bartender. And I had my own horseshoeing business, which is very hard physical work. I was a
Yeah.
blacksmith. And I would pay for college and I'd go back for a few quarters or semesters. And then I worked for a ranch for a while. I was the cow boss. And for 3 years, I loved that. But I was prompted while I was doing that job that I wasn't fulfilling my reason for being. And I packed up what little I owned, which I didn't own much, and moved to the East Coast. And I went to Philadelphia and ended up going to school at Temple and got a degree in journalism.
Okay.
And so after that, I worked for a few years working. Again, I had to work odd jobs. I worked as a receptionist and I telemarketed, but I also started my own writing business. And then I got hired to cover Congress as a journalist. And I did that for 3 years. And I covered the Congress, the executive branch, and Supreme Court on behalf of agriculture, so ag policy. And then I went to law school. So
Wow.
all of this, as long as I kind of kept moving and I was doing my spiritual practice. In fact, I would live in spiritual centers. So a lot of my life was working, but also a lot of prayer life and community that kept me on the straight and narrow. But then law school came in the early 90s and did okay during law school, all the extra stress. But as soon as I was taking the bar, all of a sudden, all the physical stress that was stuck in my body just started coming out. I started having chronic pain. My first big problem with chronic pain was endometriosis. And I had it really bad. And I did 5 surgeries. And so now I'm trying to be a lawyer and I get a clerkship with the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Federal Claims. But while I'm there doing that, I had to have 2 surgeries because the pain was so bad. And then the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years, I don't have an exact timeline. The pain, I just kept on having multiple layers of pain. I also had fibromyalgia and I got migraines and I had low back pain from all the hard work I did shoeing horses. So I had all these causes of chronic pain. And I go to the doctor and I say, okay, take out all my female organs. And she's like, it won't really help you. And I'm like, oh God, what are we going to do? She says, well, you have to take pain medication. I said, my mom's an addict. I'm set up to be an addict. I know that. And so she says, you have to do it. You have to get a hold of the pain ahead of it. Because if you keep on going, your nervous system will be shot. It'll just be overrun by pain. And that was before they got so worried about the use of pain meds. So anyhow, I take pain meds, but I'm thinking if this is the rest of my life, I need some extra help. So I asked her to refer me to a psychologist. And I thought, if I can't change the pain, I'm going to have to change my relationship to the pain. And for many years, I could just be tough because that was a cowgirl, Montana cowgirl, sports, all that. I could just put it behind me and keep on going. But it was getting to the place in my life where I could no longer deal with the pain. I just couldn't handle it emotionally with everything else. And note that at this time, as an attorney, the stress just keeps on. You just get more and more responsibility. And one day I'm going to the grocery store and I'm like, I have PTSD because I'm flashing. I diagnosed myself and then I explained that to the psychologist. She said, you sure do. So I started dealing with it then, but it took me literally the near-death experience because I tried to medicate or avoid the pain by taking care of myself, managing my life, and my spiritual practice. My number one strategy was leaving my body, disassociating. So spiritual practice for me, I'd bypass. I would use the prayers and that part to try to leave my body behind, not deal with the pain and that was still stuck inside me.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. I can understand. Can you share with people some of the things that went on with your mom? Like, what were some of the most horrific things that you went through? And then maybe share what were the thought patterns or thoughts that you created around those events? Because those are what make us sick, right? It's not the actual event itself. It's how we perceive the event and the self-talk that comes from it. So can you share?
My mom could be really fun to be around. So that was confusing to me. You could have this fun mom, but then there's this mom that when she was drinking, that one time she choked me, her anger was big and I just want to stay away from her. But then as we got older, now I'm in my early teens, And she started getting suicidal. And I would find her with a gun on her legs threatening to commit suicide.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'd have to talk her out of it. I'd say, I love you, Mom. That's not you. That's something dark. It's not you. That's not who you are. And
Yeah.
she would pull herself together and not do it. But so I was always on call. So being a lawyer brought that up in me because for my mom, I had to be there to try to save her life.
Yeah.
It was my job to try to take care of her and keep her alive while I'm trying to stay away from her so she can't get her hands on me. I rodeoed for many years and she was my source of getting there. She'd drive. And so if I would win, that would be okay. But if I didn't win, she would drink when she was driving and she would get into a rant and tell me that the reason I lost was to be mean to her or something. So everything was about her. And so for me, being an attorney, I decided I couldn't let anybody close, although I've always loved animals and opened my heart to animals. And I'm very kind and generous by nature. So I had this inner conflict because part of me wants to run from everyone. But part of me wants to love and take care of everyone. And I did take care of my mom. So it's just whole thing is just all mixed up. And then
Wow.
you put it on steroids. But I am an attorney and my job is to take care of you. And you want to hire me as your attorney because I am fierce in defense. But I had to also learn how to handle all that inside. So it was all these messages that it's not safe to love. If anybody gets too close, you got to run. I wouldn't necessarily run physically, but I'd certainly run where I'd leave the relationship so that you couldn't be close to me. I mean, the first few years in psychology and therapy was just about me being able to stay in the boat as our relationship got closer. That to me was terrifying. And
Wow.
yeah, so she would tell me, she says, so like horses are by nature, they run to avoid the prey. They were preyed upon by animals that eat meat. So they're all wired and they don't even have the forebrain that we have. They only have the amygdala. And so their whole way to stay safe is to be aware of their surroundings and to be able to leave or get far enough away. And so I was wired much like a horse. You know, I'm always sensing, trying to figure out, am I safe? And then
Yeah.
I find a way to leave.
Yeah. I get that. That makes sense. So what was this near-death experience that came about?
So I'd been practicing law for 20 years at that time and had my own law practice. And for the last year, the whole year of 2015, I'd had inflammation around my heart or pericarditis. And I went in and out of the hospital emergency room. One time I even had to ride in the ambulance because the pain got so bad that I got shocky. And so they take me in and they know it's my heart. And then they diagnose pericarditis, inflammation on the heart. But they don't know a lot about what causes pericarditis and they don't know how to treat it very much.
Right.
So it just keeps on getting worse. I'm in and out of the hospital. Now I'm spending 2 or 3 days hospitalized. And finally, in the wintertime, I go to a heart doctor in another town in Montana, Billings. And when we're on the way down there, and it's a horrible storm, my husband's driving and I'm watching, observing myself, and I'm like, I'm in pretty bad shape. I could have sepsis because
Yeah.
all my symptoms were just off the charts. And so when I went to the heart doctor, I asked his assistant, I said, I think he should admit me. And she's like, why? And I told her, and he comes in and he says, I'm going to admit you. And I had my CRP at that time, which is a marker of inflammation, was 197. They get nervous if it's more than 7. I had pneumonia and pleuritis also. So I had extreme systemic inflammation, but mostly around my heart and lungs.
Yeah.
They didn't put me on the regular floor and I wasn't on the ICU. There's a floor in between, and that's where they take people after they have heart surgery, where they have to give you more care. So I was put in that in between floor. And I wasn't intubated, but I was on oxygen. And at night, I couldn't hardly sleep because so much pain. The inflammation was just horrid. And I was laying there, and next across the hall, somebody coded and died. And so I'm like, I'm in a pretty serious place. And then the next night, it wasn't across the hall, but I apparently left my body because I was in the room with the happenings and with that soul as that person was leaving. So the next day I talked to them and they said, yep, that's true. There were 2 people who've passed on since you've been here. So that night I was talking to God and it's like, I could die. And it's like, well, yes, you could. And I'm like, well, I don't really like it here. It's kind of been a shit show. And I'm like, I shouldn't talk to God that way. So I'm watching myself. And then I kind of laugh because as I'm talking to God about leaving, I never thought about my success, the money, the things I won, the state championships, the cases, none of that. None of it mattered. All I thought
Mhm.
about was who and what I loved. And that included my husband, my animals, God, all of that. And I thought if I leave, they could get by without me. I felt into it and I'm like, it'll be hard, but it would be okay. And so
Mhm.
as soon as I gave myself permission, I just left my body and I go up, up, up. And it was a vast tube of white and gold shimmery light. It was so big. There's no time or space out of the body. And it was like this crystal cord that was bigger than the earth. And I'm just all in it. And I'm going up, up, up. I'm like walking in the higher up atmosphere. And I feel like I'm a little 4-year-old and I'm running to my heavenly parents' lap. I mean, I can't hardly wait to get there. And I just feel so much love. I feel totally worthy. Everything that I ever dreamt of about coming home, I'm experiencing in my body, and it's a million times better.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it was so amazing. And then I realized I'm going to see my spiritual teacher any minute, and he's not going to be happy with me because I haven't finished the reason I was born. And
Yeah.
I knew I could stay. I was certainly welcome to stay. I was loved. I was accepted. It was everything I could ever imagine and way more. But I immediately stopped and I thought, and I went into my heart and I'm like, I only have like a nanosecond and I don't have a choice. I mean, it's not up to me if I
Mhm.
get to stay or go. And so I went into my heart and my gut and I made 2 promises. I promised to do whatever it took to heal and to get into my body, which really I had no idea why I said that. Now I
Mhm.
know looking back, it's because I was always out of my body
Yeah.
because of the bypassing and the getting out of it for the pain. So as soon as I made those promises, I just fall from high in the upper atmosphere right back into my body. And it was like thud, thunk, and it was awful. In my book, I write about it was like crawling into a dead elk carcass.
Mm.
It was like, here I am in this body, this carcass that's really not, it feels very different than what I've just experienced. It is sick, it's heavy with energy, it's heavy in weight. It is simply not my divine garment that I just spent time in.
Do you think for the first time you were feeling who you really were?
Well,
Like, coming
I,
into that body and feeling that heaviness that like, "Oh my gosh, I am so sick and I need so much help."
yes, I felt it, but it was also the juxtaposition of what
Mhm.
I just experienced out of the
Right.
body.
Mm.
It was like the far on one end of the plus scale to the far end of the minus scale.
Yeah. I've talked about that with people too, just with my own like dying experience. And it's just, it is so hard to explain the perspective that you gain from going through that because I'm sure you know this, but our brains can only imagine what we know. Our imagination does not go beyond exposure. So if we've never seen it, never heard of it, couldn't fathom it, it won't just come into our brains, right? And so if you haven't actually experienced it, it's very hard to feel into what it feels like to cross over and come back. And so I get what you're saying. I think it's really hard. And I always try my best to explain to people. But I really loved, though, when you were saying just those things about nothing really mattered but the people. It wasn't the money, it wasn't the wins. And I think that's really important for people to sit with for a moment. You know, when life is really hard, just take that moment to sit and feel the stillness and think about what do I love in my life? Like, what am I so grateful for? And when you just sit and feel into all the things that you can love about your life, all those things that seem so big become so small.
Based on my experience, I do not think that when we leave our bodies, a lot of what we spend time stressing about, that we ever think of them again, except for maybe a past life review, and then we kind of wish we hadn't done it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that 95% of what we experience in the world is unreality based on what happens to us after we leave our bodies. And the
Mhm.
biggest unreality is that there's death.
Mhm.
Because once we've gone through it and come back, we know that when we leave, life goes on.
Mhm.
And I liked it there. I mean, if I didn't have the desire to finish my reason for being, and my number one value is honor and integrity, I would have left in a heartbeat, especially if
I
I didn't have
like
to
it
come back
there.
again. Now I do love it here now. So
Yeah.
I can say that, but it took the healing for me to get to that place. So
Yeah.
it is a very good place, but it's really gave me perspective on what's important in life.
In this lifetime, yeah.
Yeah.
This present moment. Okay, so you go through that experience, and then what comes of that? So after that, you're processing and you're thinking about how you need to heal and those promises that you made. How do you take the next step in fulfilling those promises?
Well, very interesting is the first thing was very practical. I was not granted immediate healing. I was granted to come back, and then I promised to do anything. So I started keeping my promise. And the first thing that my inner promptings, I came back with a greater awareness of this connection. So I feel the promptings more in the direction. And the first direction and prompting is I had to learn how to sleep. I hadn't
Mm,
slept for decades because of the pain and the stress. And
mhm.
I just kept on pushing myself. So note that with decades of habit of not sleeping, it took me 3 years, which was in retrospect fairly fast. It seemed like forever to learn how to sleep. And I took medicine at first. I took allopathic or MD medicine.
Mhm.
I went to naturopaths. I did sleep hygiene. I did multiple different things. And some habits I carry to this day. I do not work after, I try to quit at 5, but
Mhm.
I don't work after 6. And I run 2 businesses, but I get up at 4. I'm very sincere about going to bed early and getting my sleep because that's the cornerstone of my ability to create, to feel good, to live in the love and light and the vibration that I want to. So,
Yeah. I feel like Cinderella sometimes because I'm kind of the same way. I'm pretty strict about sleep, and especially with my kids too. And I'm very strict about their sleep. And so I'm watching the clock, and whatever the bedtime is that comes around, I'm like, I'm out, gotta go. Don't care where I'm at. It's over. I gotta get my sleep because I know how much my body will pay if I don't get my sleep.
yeah, and just the ability to have to stay in our hearts and to
Hmm.
live a higher quality life because I really believe that's why we're here.
Hmm.
And so that there's nothing more important to me than to be able to find that vibration and maintain it throughout the day. And obviously it's challenging. I'm a trial attorney. So
Yeah.
there are times when you're battling with opposing counsel when I just want to contribute. There's a part
Yeah.
of me that is definitely fierce.
Yeah.
And my clients deserve that. I need to
Mhm.
defend them. But I try to do it now in a way that maintains my ability to stay in the vibration of love and light.
Yeah. That makes sense to not let yourself get involved frequency wise, right? You can intellectually get involved and be where you need to be at,
Right.
right? In the defense, but you don't need to have those emotions behind it necessarily to have the right thoughts and help them in the right
Right.
way.
Or
Mhm.
if you do, it's in service of your client. I
Yeah.
mean, if I feel something that will serve my client to tell their story, then it is
Mhm.
appropriate to share it. But it's not about me, and it's not about my emotions, and it's not about me tangling with opposing
Mhm.
counsel,
Yeah.
which is can be very hard if you're a fierce warrior.
Well, go
Yeah.
Hertha.
Right.
Okay, so share with us then how this makes a transition into doing the equine Gestalt coaching.
Sure. So after leaving the hospital and finally getting enough sleep, and it took me months to be able to get back to work. Yeah, because I was so sick. So it was like it's like paying your mortgage. If you borrow a lot of money for a long time, you just pay interest. And it's like, I'm never going to get paid principal. And I felt like I am never going to get to the place where I start getting healthy.
Mm,
And I don't know if it was 2 years or 3 years or where it was, but at some point I started to getting ahead and I started to be able to embody more light and more love. And
mhm,
once we embody light and love, it's almost like it starts fueling and running through us to help us heal. I
mhm,
just recorded a masterclass on teaching the touchstones of transformational healing. And so what I learned is I really focused on what does it take to heal? And to
mhm,
me, it's again, it's very practical. We have to create the right scenario and consciousness for it to happen. And I just kept on doing that. And along the way, I came to a teacher who taught equine gestalt therapy. Now, at first, I wasn't going for myself because note, I still have what one therapist, Kelly McDaniel, has coined as mother hunger. And if you have mother hunger, that means that, I didn't get what I needed when I was younger, but I sure wasn't going to depend on a woman who was more powerful than me to teach me, to help me get better, because it would bring out all of my wounds. I took my friend to a retreat, and it was somebody I was really close to, and she had had a horrible trauma. The police had shot her son in front of her, and he died, and they didn't let her go to him. And so she'd been carrying this trauma around for a couple of years and couldn't sleep.
Wow.
And she asked me for help, and I did everything I could to help her, but I didn't have any skills then besides being willing to listen and to be there with her. So I took her to this retreat. So I bring her, and the teacher, Melissa Pierce, did a session, a process with my friend, where my friend was able to release the pain that was stuck inside of her. It was actually a deep release, and on multiple levels of being, where she could see her actually come back together and heal and let go of. I mean, she's never going to get rid of the losing her son, but at
The
least she could
memory.
live in life in a different way. She slept that night. And so I watched that, and it's like, I want to do that. So I signed up to do the coursework with Melissa Pierce, that Touched by a Horse. And I did the first program, which was 2 years, and got my coaching certificate. And then I went to the master program and got further training. So I started helping other people heal. And my first retreat was 5 women who lost someone to suicide, 3 of them their children. And I
Wow.
was so earnest about wanting to be there to help them, that into a part of my being I didn't know existed. I love coaching. And when I'm coaching, there's nothing else that exists. I reach a place in my consciousness that when I go back to my morning, I do a morning practice, spiritual practice. I try to remember how I feel when I'm coaching to inform my spiritual practice, because I'm so selfless and so connected in that coaching part of me. And those women said it changed their lives, and they were able to live differently from the process that they experienced with my horses and I. And so since then, I've done 9 retreats, and I founded 4 Horses for Wholeness. And my husband and I built a really nice retreat center on our ranch. And I wrote a book called The Alchemy of Resilience. And I'm giving talks. I'm also a paid speaker for inspirational talks.
Yeah. Can you share with people a little bit what it looks like? Because I think I'm familiar. I grew up with horses, but for people that aren't familiar at all with horse therapy and coaching, what does this look like? Because some people are like, I would never get on a horse. Is it getting on a horse? I know there's different therapies. Like some people get on a horse. Some people never even get on the horse. They just be around the horse. What does your
Yeah.
sessions look like?
So I have, even though my business is 4 Horses for Wholeness, it's because as I was healing, I recognized that I had 4 bodies, that my consciousness mostly lives in. It's the physical, the spiritual, mental, and emotional. And so I named my horses the four Horses for Wholeness to signify those 4 bodies. But I actually have 6 horses. And my husband said, I thought it was 4 Horses for Wholeness. You only need 4. And I'm like, then I'm going to call it 80 Horses for Wholeness.
Yeah.
But my 6 horses, and I bring them all into a really nice indoor barn retreat center. And the horses are either tied up or installed so that I can see them, because they're all part of the process. And for my retreats, 8 women come. Most of them have not had any experience with horses. We do not do riding. And at first, people just get to spend some time with a horse, brushing them, feeling how they are. And it's the most amazing thing, because my horses are used to this. And when they resonate at peace, HeartMath has measured their hearts to measure 5 times greater than our hearts. So they're the ultimate down regulator for us to co-regulate with. And they are so sweet. One woman last year, we did a session, and she found that place inside of herself where she was feeling. We do mother hunger retreats too for women who have mother hunger. And this woman, the stuff that she said that her mom told her, and she was probably saying it for the first time ever. And you could see her, she was just kind of froze and stuck in this place. She could say it, but she went back to that, whatever age she was at when her mom was telling her that. And she had processed this. And so it's going through her, and she's going through the healing process. And I put her in the round corral with Merlin, and Merlin is loose with her but he comes as close to her as he can get. And he's standing with his head behind her, barely touching her back. And so she's just kind of processing and soaking it in. And I said, has anybody ever had your back like Merlin does? And her lips kind of turn up and she's like, no, she
Oh.
feels it. She lets him in. There's something that is magical. It's almost like the horse's energy and love and compassion and goodness it's like essential oils get across the blood-brain barrier.
Mhm.
Horses' love and support somehow gets past our defenses that we've created to protect ourselves from other people. And
Mhm.
so she let, Merlin's support and love in. And then she started smiling, and you could just see her being went from being in this place where you could see all the pain from the past and at that young age. And she just starts lighting up, and her being starts filling up with this light and love. And as Merlin's still behind her. And then he reached his head around her. And literally, I'm getting spirit tingles as I tell you this. He hugged her with his head. He wrapped it around her. And she was able to accept that. And her whole being and what she looked like changed. And so
Wow.
that's one example. My big mare Mystic is totally anchored in her feet. She's 1,700 pounds. She has total self-confidence. She's not arrogant, but she's very comfortable with herself. And if somebody is not congruent, like I might have you lead her and say, now tell me something you believe. And if you say, I believe I'm successful, but you don't really believe it, Mystic will stop. She's like,
That's crazy.
yeah. And sometimes I'm like, you're being a little hard on her. And Mystic said, no, this is my job. She's an equidetector for people to find their congruence.
So I feel like people are going to want to know this. Did you train her to do that, or you just found that she naturally was doing that every time somebody was kind of lying to themselves?
Yes, that is her. They're all a little bit different. Any horse can coach because they're the super empaths. We humans think we're empathic, but they're many times over that because of their brain and because of their survival mechanism.
Mhm.
And so she can tell if you say, I'm angry, and you're not directing it at her, but you're honest with that. She's like, okay, that's congruent. She's much more concerned about you being incongruent. To her, that's dangerous. Our
Well, but do you think my explanation, I would imagine, on this is that, yes, when you're not congruent, well, what happens then is this shift energetically in your body. When we lie, there's a shift, there's a blood pressure elevation, there's a heart rate elevation. And I'm guessing that's what she senses more than anything, right?
I'm not sure
I'm not
because
sure.
when she'll come up to you. So here's another story. Mystic was only 3 or 4. So she's polite. And my friend who hadn't been around horses wanted to meet her. But Mystic kept on putting her nose on her chest. In horse terms, that's impolite. But she's trained to be polite. And I'm looking at that going, So I said to my friend, I said, do you have something in your health, in your area, your body that you know of in your chest? And she says, oh, yeah, I had a double mastectomy. I had breast cancer.
Hmm.
Mystic can sense the energy where it's got tangles, where it's not
Mhm.
whole. And her way that she does that, she doesn't have hands and her hooves are a little occupied on the ground.
Yeah.
So she uses her nose. And she'll sometimes want to move energy with her nose, and they will move around a person after they've done their piece of work and help move the energy by how they position their bodies. Some people say they're chakra balancing
Mhm.
because the horses can sense. So they're truly reading energy
Yeah.
and not just in our bodies, out beyond us. And they know these horses have learned any horse can do it, but they have to know that we'll let them help us heal. And so
Yeah.
they help us heal by where they position themselves and sometimes by getting really close to us and wrapping us in a hug. If they go over your head with theirs, my horses haven't done that a lot, but it's like over with their nose.
Mhm.
It's like clearing the head area.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mystic sounds very, very unique. Do all your horses have some sort of really unique ability in their own way that's just different?
Yes. So I'll tell you about them because it's
I don't know, I just love this. So I'm like, tell me more.
yeah. So Monk is he's the shortest one. He's like, but he's gorgeous. He has this long, long, like almost 3 feet long mane.
Mhm.
And it's all white and it's just beautiful. And he's only 14.2, which is almost pony size, but he's not a pony and he doesn't like short jokes. And he is the spiritual body horse. And he's
If I meet him,
incredibly,
I will be sure to be like, "Hey, big boy."
yeah, exactly. And he's like, he loves me. They all do, but and he will coach. A couple weekends ago, a woman wanted to come and she did a major, major piece of work, but her other friend came with her. And so I let her, she had met Monk 3 or 4 years ago. And so I let her hold, I just put Monk on a lead rope. Figured
Mhm.
Monk would talk to her. Monk talks to people and they can hear him. And when he first realized that we would talk with him, because he's like, horses see in pictures,
Okay.
but they do talk with us based on our capacity to allow that to happen. And so Monk talked to her. And she said that he licked her head, and I'm like, "Well, he's never done that before," but I am sure it has some meaning. I
Yeah.
That one I don't know about. So that's Monk. And then Ruby is the emotional body horse, and she's a bay, red colored with black mane.
Okay.
She's the only one who's not doesn't have gypsy in her. Gypsy is a mid-sized draft that
Mhm.
has lots of hair, and they're just gorgeous.
They are.
Ruby is a thoroughbred, and she was my ranch horse, but she's been around. She's almost 20. She's the oldest. She's the lead mare, and she's incredibly sweet and a
Mhm.
little bit persnickety. She's the lead mare, but she's the emotional body horse. And
What did she do?
oh, if somebody's struggling, she will get as close and just be this, you'll feel just her sweetness coming out of her. I mean,
Mhm.
she doesn't do as much incredible stuff because her whole thing is about just being close
Yes.
and doing the container. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. That makes sense. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, I just have all these questions because I'm a horse person, I guess. But how do you find these horses? Do you just buy a random horse? I mean, you're saying all of them are like this, but some horses are just kind of little buttheads sometimes. Some are. Some are.
That's
I feel like
true.
some of them are not into it. They're like,
Right.
no, thank you. You guys have too many problems, you humans.
Totally. You're absolutely right. My horses came to me as I was healing. So it was
Okay.
almost as part of my healing path. I had Ruby, then I got Mystic, and I actually bought her at a sale. I went to this sale to get another horse. Mystic was standing next to her, and I fell in love with her. And even though I'm a horseshoer and I've worked at a veterinary college, I missed the part that she had a bad hock. I could not see that. And I love her. She anchored my healing. She was present for some of my deepest work. She was the horse that I worked with.
Mhm.
And so she's just foundational to me, who I am today, and to the Four Horses for Wholeness.
Yeah.
Next, I it was during COVID, and they were selling horses online, and I was at work, and I'm like, "I don't have time to look at horses." I'm, like, doing depositions. This is not okay.
Yeah.
And it was Monk, and he had a $5,000 price tag on him. I knew what gypsies were going for, and so I bid once, and at the end of the day, I had bought him.
Surprise.
Yep, and I go to pick him up, and he's on this ranch in Wyoming. It was like the lunar landscape. I get lost. I get there late, and I see this horse, this little horse, and he's really sick, like snot running out of both nostrils. And I walk up to him like, "Oh my God, I bought a pony." And I would have never bought Monk, if I hadn't bought him sight unseen.
Oh,
I
man.
love that horse. He is my
Oh.
number one ranch horse, and he is so important to me. So they just kind of kept on coming in. And the other one that I didn't tell you about is Nighthawk is a black purebred gypsy,
Mm.
and he is very cerebral, kind of introverted. He has some of his own trauma that he had to work through. He had a bad accident happen with him with driving chains.
Oh.
Yeah, but he's back, and it's very interesting to have him home. And then there's Sage, who is a big Palomino. He's a gypsy quarter horse. He's about 15.3, and he's gorgeous. Sometimes I call him Hollywood. And he's a little bit of a Dennis the Menace. He's an
Okay.
excellent coach, very sweet. The geldings are all sweeter than the mares for coaching. I mean,
Mhm.
Ruby is very sweet, but she's still a little bit more demanding than the geldings. And the last one that I added is I was prompted to go to a sale, and I got a gypsy standard bred. His name's Merlin.
Mhm.
And he's the high end of the horses that coach are the ones that will mimic. If somebody has something on process that they're not aware of, he
Mm.
might act it out for them. And he'll start doing something, and I'm like, he doesn't usually do that. Does that mean something to you? And they're like, yeah. That's what it's like, something in their subconscious that's not quite to their conscious. He'll
Mhm.
act it out. So
Like what? Can you give an example of a time he acted out something? What did he act out? And then what did the person say it was?
I don't remember exactly what it was
Mhm.
because it was 2 summers ago,
Okay.
but it might be like, somebody they're angry or something. So
Okay.
maybe, and he doesn't usually pin his ears.
Okay.
So maybe he pins his ears and I'm like, "That's really odd for him. Does that mean
Yeah.
something for you?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm not happy about that."
Mm.
Or instead of pay attention, he may go and look outside, look off and
Mhm.
wander. I'm like,
Okay.
"He's moving away. Does that mean something to you?" They're like, "Well, yeah, that's what everybody did, or that's what I do to my wife."
Okay. Okay. So maybe the horse is like, I want no part in this. And it's like, what does that message mean for you? That's interesting.
I actually
Well,
think it's more than that. I think
okay.
he's picking up on something that they're repressing,
Mm.
and he
Mhm.
sees it in a picture and he acts it out. I think he's doing more to help bring it to their awareness.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Horses are very magical. I think there's a lot of people that could benefit, but I think they're unaware that this even exists, to be honest. I think if that's not part of your world, if horses are just not part of your world, you don't even think about that. When somebody needs therapy or needs help, they're never like, "Oh, let me look into some horse therapy." I think the majority are like, "Let me call a therapist," right?
Yeah, and that has its place.
For
So,
sure.
but a couple of weekends ago, I was at a riding clinic, and I was talking to a friend of mine who was there, and she has a beautiful dressage mare. And so that mare has lots of handling, is in a fancy barn, and has good manners. And
Mhm.
my friend asked me what I've been doing, and I started telling her about working with the horses, equine Gestalt, and how much all these years horses, we just rode them and we thought that they were just for us.
Yeah.
And now they realize that we're going to let them help us heal. That mare, when I said that, she goes, and she walks forward gently and she puts her nose on my hands and right in front of my heart and starts licking my hands. And I'm like, "Oh
Oh.
my God, you're licking my hands." I love it when horses lick my hands, and they tend to lick my hands a lot. And they say our hands are an extension of our heart.
Uh-huh.
So they're either enjoying that heart energy or they're trying to help it come through so that I stay open.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my God, she never does this."
Yeah.
And it's like that horse, the light bulb went off. She says, "She hears me, she sees me, she knows what we can do."
Mhm. That's really amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all this. It's really fascinating. I think a lot of people could benefit. And I am sure somebody's going to listen to this and be like, I have never heard of this and I have never thought of this, but I could see where this could help me. Because I think a lot of people are animal lovers and they get a lot of comfort by just snuggling with their cat or snuggling with their dog. And so I think if you're that type of person, then this is something that could definitely benefit you. Obviously, it could benefit everyone, right? But I think I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on that, but I would think those people might be a little more open to this, the animal lover type people.
I'm not sure it matters.
I don't think it
All it
matters.
matters is somebody who wants to get to the core, wants to live more
Mhm.
wholeheartedly, and
Yeah.
it's similar to, I had to do body somatic experiencing because so much was stuck in my body, but what
Mhm.
actually happens in the round corral with the horses is it can actually be a physical release. It is a way for us to access multiple layers of being and to be able to let go of stuff that is hard to do. It was hard for me to do just in talk therapy.
Mhm.
I actually have more problem with people who are professional horsewomen than the people who aren't because they have expectations
Yeah.
and they want to be in charge. And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, that's not how it works here. We're partners and the horses are helping us. And
Yeah.
so they had to relearn some stuff. And then it gives them a whole nother viewpoint about what the horse is capable of.
Yeah. That's interesting. I could totally see that where they step in and they're just like, "Okay, what do I need to do to the horse? What do I need to make the horse do for me?" Because
Right.
yes, I mean that's typically what they do is they're controlling the animal instead of putting the animal in control.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not what we do here.
Yeah. So, do you have another retreat coming up or
I do. I have
Mhm.
a retreat that starts July 10th through the 13th, and that's for mother hunger. And then
Okay.
I have a Path to Wholeness retreat the last weekend in July, and then 2
Okay.
in September. And
Okay.
people can find that on my website.
Okay. What's your website?
There is 4 Horses for Wholeness, but I
Okay.
also have Hertha Lund
Okay. So that's where people should go then to book a retreat. Oh,
Yes, I'd love to have you. It's the benefit of being out in nature. So
yeah.
Hertha does mean Mother Earth.
Uh-huh.
And so this is like my Shambhala, my slice of heaven on earth, because we have a beautiful cattle ranch nestled in the mountains, a high mountain meadow. And so people get to be there. We take care of your housing. I have a chef that comes, and then we work with the horses. And so, literally, most people who come to the retreat, their most common feedback is life changing and that it gave them what they needed to be able to face what was coming next in life.
I bet it's nothing short of miraculous. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.